That sounds wheezy. That sounds like George and Wheezy.
Moving on up. Trying to get it to move on up. I want to get up and get out, you know? It's the racist depression of my bronchial tubes.
It's about class struggle and pneumonia.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Hold the weapon! Now! Charge the lightning field.
So, Jake, when was the first time that you ever saw A Christmas Story, do you think?
I honestly don't know. It feels kind of like, at least for me and for my family, to be a bit of a ubiquitous part of the Christmas experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably an easy Christmas spirit to just put that on and have that run in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it became part of the 24-hour thing, then it just kind of, it would almost always just be playing in the background.
Right. I think that was the tipping point, I think, there. Because, yeah, when you and I were kids, it was kind of hard to find. And, you know, until it got on cable, nobody had really seen it since it came out, you know? And then when they started doing the 24-hour thing, that was really great when it first happened. You know, it was kind of an underground film for the longest time. And it wasn't until the 24-hour thing that it became so ubiquitous that it's infuriating. It's played way too much now. It took the opposite route of It's a Wonderful Life. Like when we were kids, It's a Wonderful Life played on every channel, every day between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then NBC finally bought it exclusively, and now you can only see it once a year. Which is fine, because you don't need to see that movie 1,000 times a year. That's just not healthy for anyone. Even though it's still a very good movie, and people don't really think of it that way because they used to see it all the fucking time.
Yeah, I mean, I got tired of it as a kid. I didn't want to see it anymore.
And Christmas Story is now becoming that way. Everybody knows Christmas Story.
Yeah, it's very divisive now. I think a lot of people, you either love it or you loathe it.
Yep. But if I have to hear somebody yell, you'll shoot your eye out, kid, one more time, I swear to God, I'll shoot their eye out.
But it's funny. It's truly a classic, and it has those moments of nostalgia for like all of us, at least everyone in America, you know, of a certain age. You know, Fragile or Shoot Your Eye Out.
Must be Italian.
It's automatic. Mm-hmm. You know exactly where that's from. You know what it is. It's
now in the zeitgeist, like entrenched. Even though, yeah, that's a recent phenomenon. But you're right. It's extremely divisive because most people just don't want to see it anymore. They would rather throw their leg-shaped lamp through the TV than watch Christmas Story again, which is sad.
In 2020, Esquire magazine rated it as the number 3 best Christmas movie of all time.
Whoa. I'm not going to ask about Die Hard, but what are the other two?
Well, now that you've put me on the spot.
Sorry, you offered it up. I thought maybe you had that. I thought maybe you had that. I don't know.
They ranked 71 films. That's crazy. Number 1. All right. We'll do top.
Top of 10, top of 5.
All right, number 1. What do you guess it is? What's your guess?
I'm going to say It's a Wonderful Life.
You are correct, sir.
Woohoo!
Capper would be proud.
Even though it's mostly a New Year's movie.
Yeah. You know, but it's...
holiday season, yeah.
Number 2. What do you think?
It's obviously not my favorite, but it's probably Miracle on 34th Street?
No.
Oh, really?
That one comes in at number 7, which is actually...
That's kind of low.
Yeah, I mean, you might be surprised at some of the other... Yeah. Nope, so it's not that.
Wow.
Then what's your other guess?
Okay. Oh, God, it better not be Muppets Christmas Carol.
Muppets Christmas Carol comes in at number 9. And A Christmas Carol, the 1951 version, which is the best version.
Oh,
is,
easily.
That's number 10.
Wait, hold on. The actual Christmas Carol is below Muppets Christmas Carol?
All right, maybe I should just we're going to back it up. I'm going to do your all right, your 16. All right. 16, Meet Me in St. Louis.
Ugh.
Number 15, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, the Burl Ives claymation. Okay.
Number 14, Charlie Brown Christmas.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so low, but
Number 13, Elf.
really?
Number 12, The Apartment, which I don't think of as a Christmas film.
Isn't that a horror movie? The Apart?
No, and a Jack Lemmon classic, Shirley MacLaine.
That yes. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a horror movie later called The Apartment, but whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, probably. Number 11, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay, all right, fine.
Number 10, A Christmas Carol from 51.
Too low.
Number 9, Muppets Christmas Carol.
Gee, that's ridiculous.
Number 8, Bad Santa.
No, just stop it.
Number 7, Miracle on 34th Street, obviously the original.
Obviously.
Number 6, Scrooged.
My personal favorite Christmas movie.
Number 5, Home Alone.
Oh, above Scrooged?
Number 4, White Christmas from 54.
I don't care about the movie. I've seen it so many times.
Number 3, A Christmas Story. And number 2, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
I'm sorry, A Christmas Story is a way better movie than that. I know everyone loves it. That's not even the best vacation movie, for Christ's sake. Vacation is the best vacation movie. the middle one, who cares? But you know what? It's exactly like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Everyone loves the third one, and the third one got all the accolades, but Fellowship is so much better, and the middle one sucks. So,
number 19, Eyes Wide Shut.
They consider that a Christmas movie?
Number 23, Gremlins. How's Gremlins that far back?
Yeah, how is it that low?
26, Die Hard.
Come on.
Okay, if you're putting on the list,
Okay, so what's their criteria here, right?
I'm really trying to figure it out now.
That low for Die Hard? Yeah, you're right. If they put it on the list, you got to judge it like the other movies.
Yeah, I don't understand. All right, I'm looking at they don't really say. They just...
That is a garbage list. Next episode, we should do our top Christmas movies, do our countdown.
Christmas in Connecticut is 64?
What the fuck is that?
Oh, it's 1945
movie.
Barbara Stanwyck. My mother loves old 50s Christmas films, so it's good. It's good. It doesn't need to be. I mean, Jack Frost is above it. This is
with Michael Keaton or the horror movie?
With Michael Keaton, which is also a horror movie. I mean, Just Friends is above that. All right, Batman Returns is... Oh, come on. This list's crazy.
Batman Returns is not a Christmas movie. Well, you can make the debate, I guess.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, because, I mean, our criteria is... Well, we won't go into that, but...
A Very Merry Christmas? Have you even heard of this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're talking about the one where it's him and his family, like his two brothers? It's just called Two Brothers.
It's just two brothers. I don't understand. All right, the Polar Express. Oh God.
Come on.
This is. Oh man. How? Okay. How is The Grinch Stole Christmas, the original?
Yeah.
From '66.
The real.
How's that below A Very Harold and Kumar Christmas?
Oh, are you fucking kidding me?
I kid you the fuck not.
No. No. There's no justice in the world. This proves there is no God.
All right, Esquire.
God, that's like something you'd find on Reddit. What the fuck are you talking about?
The only reason I brought it up was it came up in an article that I was doing research about this particular film.
Nice.
And actually, I was doing research about the way this film is seen around the world.
Interesting.
And the short and sweet of it is, it's not.
Nobody else knows about Christmas
Nobody,
Story?
Yeah. I was reading this article from an Irish, I believe it was the Irish Times, and they talk about how it just never came over. It had no cultural impact because they had no reason to see it.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, though, because until TBS did the 24-hour thing, nobody in America saw it. I mean, it was...
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, A Crystal Story, it actually comes from a handful of monologues from the comedic radio personality Gene Shepard. He had these acerbic but really well-written fireside chats, stories about his time growing up and whatnot.
It was a little bit like Prairie Home Companion.
Yes, but there's a little bite to them a lot of times. And the screenplay was written by Gene Shepard himself, along with Bob Clark, the director, and Shepard's third wife, Lee Brown.
Third wife.
Apparently, Clark had been driving to go meet his girlfriend, and he heard one of the stories. Actually, the story about Flick attaching his tongue to the pole, and he couldn't stop listening. And he drove around and around, and then he's like, I got to make a movie of this. So he did. The movie was a moderate success. It kind of came and went, but it first appeared on television on HBO in 1985. A little over a year after it came out. This is at the same time it was released on VHS, and at the time, in 1985, it was easy for people to make copies of things on VHS, and so a lot of people recorded it, and when it was passed it around, it got bigger and bigger.
It was viral.
Yeah, it kind of was. People discovered it and were sharing it, and the popularity of it slowly grew. But while Christmas Story was taking off, MGM, the studio that made it, was falling apart. They were deeply in debt. And so in 1986, the studio sold its film library to Ted Turner, the owner of TNT and TBS. And so Christmas Story was one of those films. And it was Turner's idea to run it as a perennial holiday movie. And then when Turner Broadcasting merged with Time Warner, Inc. in 1997, Time Warner began to run it on a continuous film loop. So it would play 24 hours a day.
I remember when that happened.
Christmas Eve through Christmas Day on TNT.
It both vaulted it to the top and also ruined it.
I mean, that's the way it really got seen and became the true staple that it was.
Yeah, I know. It's a real Citizen Kane story, you know? He just wishes he had Rosebud. Just wishes he had that Red Ryder BB gun.
I think along with its profound presence on the dial during the Christmas time, I think there's also a longing for nostalgia that film speaks to, a purity of seeing Christmas through a child's eyes and how they view the world. But you're also having this, oh God, my brain. Sorry.
It's trying to get out.
Stay in there. You also had this nuclear family that wasn't perfect.
They were flawed.
You could see there was like a bubbling tension between the father and the mother and between the kids, and there's always something going wrong.
Well, no, that's a good point. The mythos behind 1950s America is one of the biggest influences in pop culture, and it's all bullshit. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it was one of the first things that you saw where the 50s weren't perfect, but they were still pined after. They were still thought of longingly. Yeah, you were talking about the Leave It to Beaver era, but life wasn't really like that in America. People just, for some reason, in post-war America, they decided that because of the booming economy, because of America's basically the first time they ever became a dominant force on the world stage, winning World War II, it became this huge machine of, let's just call it Americana. And a huge number of creators of media came out of that era, you know, when they were children. I mean, even Tarantino does that. This movie is interesting too, on top of that, because it's one of the first movies I can remember that is nostalgic for nostalgia. We consider that movie nostalgic, but that movie is all about nostalgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't watch Pulp Fiction today and go, I'm nostalgic for Pulp Fiction. I just take it as it is. But that movie, I am nostalgic for, and it's about nostalgia for a different era.
And a time that where almost everything we're being fed in the media is some form of nostalgia. Mm-hmm. This was one of those first shining beacons of like, look what this can do. And it helped that it was both rosy and it was a little jaded. You know, it's like you're dealing with bullies and the family doesn't quite get along, and Santa Claus is an asshole who's just going to like push you down a slide. But similar to a Grinch, it all comes around. The dad who maybe doesn't really care about his family or his son, he's the one who gets him the gift he really wants. And he's the one who's really excited for the whole thing and really lets the Christmas spirit shine. And you all have all these other elements of like fairly diverse cast of extras within the film, going to a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, but that scene is really problematic.
It is problematic.
It's really not great. But they do bring an interesting point up, though, that, you know, at least they show that side of America. They show how other non-white, non-Christian Americans have to deal with the holidays, because that is a big thing. Like, a lot of Jewish families traditionally go to Chinese restaurants on Christmas, and, you know, because they're like the only thing open. You know, and I'm glad that they showed that. I'm really not glad that they make the joke during them singing Jingle Bells, but yeah, but you know, you take it where you can get it, I guess.
I think for maybe the time, especially that like what it was talking about, the America that was and the America that like will be, you know, less than comfortable point between the two.
Yeah, it was kind of both being reverent and nostalgic to the 50s, but also at the same time kind of poking holes in our reverence of the 50s. Which, you know, it does subtly, because it's not like they make that a point.
Yeah, it's more like the blanket that's wrapping around the film.
Yeah, so that's Christmas Story.
For me, there it is. You know, it's the story of this time, this place, Ralphie and his family, and the great award, and the BB gun comes to an end. There we go. That's what it is.
I don't think Christmas Vacation would exist without Christmas Story, by the way, though. But I could be wrong, but I mean, that's just what it feels like.
I can maybe see that.
I could see how it would have been like an archetypal idea. You know what I mean? The family Christmas movie, the hijinks of a family during Christmas, Home Alone, that one, Christmas Story. I mean, that's its own like sub Uncle Buck, I guess, to a certain extent. That's a whole genre in and of its own. Even though Uncle Buck may not happen during Christmas, but
I think Uncle Buck might be Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that one. Either way, it has Macaulay Culkin in it.
It's the Hughesian universe, so
it is in fact the Hughesian universe. Speaking of universes.
Yes.
So remember how we cracked open the conundrum that is wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in, well, there's a chicken salad sandwich sewn in there, but
covered in tinfoil?
Well, it has to be tinfoil because you got to keep all the good ideas inside. That was the Tommy Westphall universe.
I do remember this particular chocolatey walnut.
And now that is, it's filled with gooey dog nougat.
It tastes like real dog.
Crunchy frog. So the Tommy Westphall universe is insanely insidious in the way that it works. However, I don't think a lot of people, and some do, but I don't think a lot of people realize that there is a similar cinematic universe to the world around the Christmas Story.
Do tell.
Well, let's just say A Christmas Story was not Ralphie Parker's first or last hurrah. So a lot of people call this either the Ralphie Parker cinematic universe or the Parkerverse or the Parker family saga. If you want to, you could just say the Christmas Story universe. That's fine.
I think if it's the Christmas saga, it feels like there should be infinity stones being put on the leg of the lamp, maybe?
Well, I mean, he does get the rifle, and he does shoot his eye out, so. A soul for a soul, you know?
And there's a great snap happened.
The blip. Stupid name.
Get blipped.
But, get blipped. Let's go to Blimpies. Let's never go to Blimpies.
I don't think Blimpies still exists, does it?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Yes, 100%.
What do you mean it's big time?
No, in that it's still a national chain. It's not like there's one left open. It's not like
Blimpie's near
Blockbuster.
me. Oh yeah, there are 2 in Iowa.
That's what I'm saying. It's not like Blockbuster where there was like one left.
Although there are
rural
2 in the
Alaska.
whole state, so
Well, there's nothing else in Iowa. And trust me, I know. I live in Nebraska. There's nothing else outside Omaha and Lincoln.
right now there are no coming soons for Blimpies. I'm on the Blimpie corporate.
You got their gold card.
Let's see, Blimpie seems to be kind of the Rust Belt. That's where Blimpie's really homing it.
Good. Like Huddle House. Good. Where all good things come from.
Huddle House?
Oh, you've never been to a Huddle House?
I don't know what a Huddle House is.
It's a knockoff Waffle House. It looks exactly the same. They stole everything. The booths look exactly the same. The floors, the outside of the building, even the signage to a certain extent, except it's red instead of yellow. They serve the exact same food. And this isn't one of those like Starbucks / Seattle Coffee Company or whatever things where they're just pretending to be another company. It is a different company, but they are completely stealing from Waffle House. And they suck.
Sir, this is Huddle House. I'll have you know, there are waffles in said Huddle House. I just say you need to get huddling. Huddle up.
Don't come around talking about waffles.
I was looking at their menu. Strawberry waffle combo is their number 1 item.
Oh, see? Yeah, and their restaurants look exactly like Waffle Houses, except different colors.
Anyway, Blimpie relates in no way, shape, or form to the Ralphie-verse.
No, not at all. These stories did originate with Gene Shepard's radio programs and in his books, which were then adapted to a stage play, then not less than 2 theatrical films, 4 made-for-TV films, 1 straight-to-video film, 1 unaired pilot for a TV show, a musical, and a live version of the movie on television. That's a pretty impressive universe based on one guy's rantings on radio.
Did we need all of that?
Well, somebody apparently did. And he claims that it's all fictional. It's not about his past.
Yeah, he says that he made all this stuff up.
Yeah, he says, quote, it's a fictionalized story from his childhood. What does that mean?
I mean, I'm writing something that happened in the 80s. It's a fictional story from my childhood, too, I guess.
Die Hard is a fictional story from our childhood. So a lot of his short stories that he read on the radio were published in Playboy magazine in the 60s. And the book, which was called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash, which they do tip the hat to in the new one, came out in 1966. It's funny. It's kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in that it was a radio play, and then it was a TV show, and then it was a book. It's done all the media you could possibly do. It didn't start off as a movie. The book itself was released in October of 66, published by Doubleday and Broadway Books, and was briefly on the New York Times bestseller list. So, well regarded, enough to the point where it got interest from movie studios, so there's that. According to the estate, the week that Shepard died, the novel was Amazon's 142nd best-selling novel, which sounds trivial, but not really. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
For a book that came out in 1966.
Strange thing, have you ever looked up to see what Gene Shepard looked like?
Yeah, he's like a cowboy.
Yeah, it kind of looks like Alex Jones.
Oh, God. I was thinking of Johnny Cash, but you're right. He does look like Alex Jones. Oh, and we'll get into that, too, because I have an interesting note about appearances later on. But
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
well, I saw one of the sequels, and it's weird who they have playing adult Ralphie. It's really bizarre. But that's like in the middle of the franchise. That's how many of these there are. Christmas Story wasn't the first dalliance into the Ralphie Parker cinematic universe. In 1976, there was a made-for-TV comedy written by Gene
In
Shepard.
quotation marks.
Well, yes, it's true. Yeah. Based on his book from 1966. Once again, it's funny that like everybody on the internet is like, the film depicts fictionalized events from his real-life childhood. That doesn't mean anything.
So he made up stories that weren't about his childhood at all.
That happened when he was a kid. Okay, all right. Well, Tom Clancy can say the same thing. I don't know. What does that fucking mean? Stephen King can say the same thing. Speaking of nostalgia, Jesus Christ. The first of which being the made-for-TV movie, The Phantom of the Open Hearth, which is directly adapted from his book. And in it, a middle-aged Ralphie Parker introduces the film to the world, face-to-face. This would... I'm dating myself now, too, but if anybody remembers the original broadcasts of Young Indiana Jones, this is kind of how that went, too. Not the DVD releases, not the VHS releases, not the online stuff. The actual original broadcast versions of Young Indiana Jones always started with a 99-year-old Indiana Jones introducing the episode. And it's kind of like that. Of course, it's all set in the 50s. But so interestingly enough, despite all of the nostalgia that we have for Christmas Story, The Phantom of the Open Hearth is actually the adventures of Ralphie Parker in high school. And it's about prom, because prom is obviously a big,
right, yeah,
traumatic event for high schoolers, especially back then. I mean, and it's really kind of run of the mill. It's very much like Ralphie likes a girl. He has to figure out how to ask her to prom. Blah, blah, blah.
Never heard that story before.
No, that's never been a story in history. The actual interesting thing about this is that much of the content of this one ends up being recycled for Christmas Story. Like the leg lamp, for instance. It's a different reason why he gets the leg lamp, but that's where it comes from. So, things like that carried over to Christmas Story, which is far and above the most mainstream of all of these works, I think. But interestingly, in this one, I'll get to why this is weird in a minute, but Ralph has a crush on his geeky next-door neighbor, Wanda Hickey, even though he kind of pined for someone else. And in this one, he gets really drunk. There's a whole thing about how he drinks alcohol excessively, it's kind of a big plot point.
Isn't he 15 in this or something?
He's a teenager. No, he's a junior, so he's got to be 17.
All right.
The funniest part is that on the Wikipedia for it, it lists it as his junior promenade dance.
Might I ask you to the promenade?
No one has ever called that ever. So of course they get drunk, and which is unusual for them. And of course they all throw up, and that's a big plot point. Yada yada yada. In this one, Gene Shepard is the Ralphie Parker that shows up at the beginning to introduce the story and also narrates throughout, which will be
just like Christmas Story.
Just like a Christmas Story and most of the other sequels. It was made for TV movie. It was fine. This is before the days of Brian Austin Green knocking up Tracy Gold in a Moment of Truth movie or whatever the fuck it is. After school specials or whatever. It's before that. But you can look it up. You can watch it. You'll probably not be that interested because it's basically the same stuff that happens in A Christmas Story. It's a lot of the same plot points.
But not as funny or endearing.
Nope, not at all. It's not as charming, funny, or interesting. There's that. And then, of course, it does have a follow-up in 1982, which is also a direct-to-video, made-for-TV movie, once again written by Gene Shepard.
Technically, it was an episode of American Playhouse, right?
It was American Playhouse, yeah, which is kind of like mystery, Masterpiece Theater. It was kind of like Masterpiece Theater.
Without the quality or the Britishness.
Or the production. Yeah. It's kind of like the ABC movie of the week. When that was a thing,
yeah, or like you said, after school special. This was kind of like is like a primetime after school special.
And hilariously, this one, which is called "The Great American 4th of July and Other Disasters," maybe Judy Blume would have written that. Maybe Captain Underpants was in it. I don't know. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's well regarded among people that have seen it as a 4th of July holiday classic. So even before A Christmas Story, they had holidays on lock.
Well, I mean, you got that and Born on the 4th of July.
And that's it.
That's it. There you go. Oh, I guess Independence Day?
1492.
1492. I don't think that one works.
Oh, no, it doesn't?
I don't think that's the same.
1492 was directed by Chris Columbus.
That is a Ridley Scott joint.
Oh, that means I was just wistful thinking.
With Amand Desant and Sigourney Weaver.
I haven't thought about Amand Desante in like forever. I think the last thing I thought about Amand Desante in was the NBC made-for-TV miniseries The Odyssey, where he plays Odysseus.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
you remember that?
I do remember that.
We got this huge get, Armand Desante. Oh, great.
You mean like nobody else?
He was a villain in some bullshit early 90s action flick. What was it?
He was in Judge Dredd.
That was what I was thinking of. Okay.
All right, there you go.
Yep, that's got to be it. Yep.
He's still working today. Still pumping stuff out.
Is he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was still alive.
He's got a lot of irons in the fire.
He's one of those guys that he's lived in America 40 years and still can never lost his accent. Like Schwarzenegger.
He doesn't need it.
So in this movie, the thing you're going to have to understand with all of these films is that the chronology makes no sense whatsoever. Everything is set in the late 40s, early 50s, but he's either grade school aged or a teenager. Which doesn't make a lot of sense.
You know, these are all fictional stories set in the time of his childhood.
Right. So they could be anything, really. So in this one, he basically, once again, not like Christmas Story, but this is going to be a theme. Ralphie, basically the entire thing is him getting ready for a big date with the girl he has a crush on. Gee, what does that sound like? The fucking last one. And this one is for the 4th of July. And then, of course, he gets ready for the date, thinks he's got everything under control, embarrasses himself on the date, wackiness ensues. You kind of get the whole thing. The interesting thing about this one, though, was that Matt Dillon played Ralphie Parker.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is being generous.
That's a get.
Yeah, that is incredible. That's like in Vegas Vacation when Audrey was like super hot. Like, where did that come from? I've seen the other Audreys.
You, sir. I've seen other Audreys. You, sir, are not an Audrey.
Are no Audrey. Oh, man.
And it's odd because, like, the dad and Flick is played by the same actor as the last one.
Yeah, there are some carryovers. And in fact, there are carryovers through much of these films, strangely.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, quite odd.
Weird when we get to the newest one, too, because, like, there are certain things where you're like, why didn't they just do it?
Oh, we're going to get into that.
I'm sure you get to that.
Yeah,
sure I'm upset. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm upset about it, too. I don't know why they did that.
Anyway.
We'll talk about it. So, the crazy thing about this is 2 movies have been made now about the Parker family, about Ralphie. Like you think they're the Wonder Years or something, even though it's before the Wonder Years. When A Christmas Story comes out, technically, it's a prequel. Nobody talks about that. A Christmas Story, The Phantom Menace comes out. Nobody knows that it's a prequel when it pops up in 1983. Also, there's a reason it kind of got buried in the box office. It's 1983.
Yeah.
82, 83, good luck. You can watch that one. Let's see, where can you find that one?
The American Playhouse one?
It's probably on YouTube. I found some of the other ones on YouTube. You know, the Disney Channel was one of the producers.
Really? Oh, it's just on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a PBS thing. It's on YouTube. It's fine. Season 1, Episode 10 of American Playhouse. Just in case you're wondering.
Look it up.
Look it up. I'm just asking questions. Got to find my truth.
Well, that was season 1, but what happens in season 4?
Writer strike.
Oh, that would make sense.
Shorter season. And then they introduce all these characters at the beginning that end up not going anywhere because of the writer strike. It's heartbreaking. And so then, of course, his Christmas Story follows directly after that in 1983. We all know this. Yeah, we've talked about this. We talked about Christmas Story. It's not important. So this is what that I watched the other day. Boy. The star-crossed romance of Josephine Koznansky, which is a made-for-TV family comedy.
Fourth season of American Playhouse.
Basically, this is a TV franchise they made one-off movie from. The movie is kind of the outlier.
Yeah.
Even though it's the only one anyone's really ever seen. It's like if Star Trek did one movie, and that's the only thing anyone knew about Star Trek. It's bizarre. And of course, this one once again goes back to older, teenaged Ralph Parker. He goes by Ralph now.
Oh, no Ralphie. You two growed up for that.
And I think they call him Ralphie a couple of times, but anyway, this movie is a Thanksgiving-themed movie. Got another American whitewashed holiday. This one is one of the most disturbing in the franchise that I can find.
Yeah.
It's really, really bizarre. So in it, the movie begins with a voiceover and Ralphie as a middle-aged man. And by the way, anybody wishing for a good ending for Ralphie, it ain't happening. He looks like a guy that you'd see at a small town bar that's there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Overweight, beard, the faded glasses. He looks like he was a trucker at some point. Very unfortunate looking. And the fact that they let Gene Shepard play it was a bizarre choice at this point. The idea is that he goes to an indie movie theater where they're showing a foreign film, because back then that's the only way you could see foreign films, that's directed by a Polish director. Mm-hmm. And while he's watching it, while he's at a movie by himself, we need to keep this in mind, he's by himself. He's making fun of the theater because it's not as white bread American as he remembers. He goes to the snack counter, and instead of popcorn, they have alfalfa sprouts, which doesn't make any sense at all. No. And I've been to a lot of indie theaters, and why the fuck would you do that?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Sounds kind of like bullshit.
And he kind of pokes fun at, there's like a vaguely transphobic joke in it too. I'm like, I can see how you could read it different ways, but it was uncomfortable. It's basically him going, look at all these damn kids and their rock and roll music and fax machines, just complaining about it. And then he goes into the film, and immediately he turns to the camera and starts talking about the movie, which is wholly annoying if you've ever gone to a movie. It's a Polish movie by a Polish director, and I only say that because they reveal his fetish for Polish women.
Okay, yeah.
He specifically has a fetish, a sexual fetish.
I mean, no offense to Polish people, but what's the distinguishing feature there?
Mm-hmm. Is it the accent? Because she doesn't really have... I mean, she has one, but it's not, like, pronounced. And like...
I mean, is she eating pierogies?
Constantly. That's his thing. He's jerking off onto videos of women eating pierogies. And then stomping on them.
She's wrapped in Polish sausage?
I tried to make that joke the other day, and it didn't quite land. In the opening scenes of the movie, which is kind of like a Wicker Man type, the lead actress, he goes, wow, it's her. It's my love. And then he starts going on about how it's because he only went to that movie because it was Polish. And he only went to that to see this woman who's Polish. And then when he sees her on screen, he goes, oh my God, that's like the love of my life, the Polish girl. I mean, we've got this weird mix of fetishism and Arrested Development. It kind of is more illuminating to the franchise than most of them. It kind of shows that this guy's kind of messed up. And
I mean, I think we can say, like, throughout the entirety of the Ralphie verse, Arrested Development seems to be a key theme.
It sure does. Yes, it does. The specter of his father looms so large, and yeah, it's
it's almost like not as much nostalgic as it is not able to break away and grow.
That's a good point. It actually might be pining for something that was before he had to be a person. You know? Mm-hmm. And then he just carried that over. Like, he completely refused to face being an adult. And especially if you watch this one, it's only about an hour long because it's a TV show episode. But when you see him as adult Ralphie... The beginning is super bizarre because, like, he's talking to the camera, but cutting in front of other people to do so, and they notice that he's doing it. So the fourth wall break is bizarre because they all seem to recognize that he's talking to someone, even though he's talking to the audience. And they're all kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? So it's like, is he just crazy or is he that sad? I really don't know. It's really weird. I mean, it's not good, and it's really boring, actually, through most of it, but the opening, 10 minutes are pretty revealing, it seems like. So the entire thing is he's doing Thanksgiving, and he kind of ditches his own family for being invited to Thanksgiving with his Polish next-door neighbor, who's got a huge thing for him, and they have a big Polish spread, a Polish smorgasbord that he's so confused by because it's so alien, because it's not American food or whatever. And of course, one of the other, instead of the Red Ryder BB gun, he wants a car, specifically a yellow Buick that he ends up buying.
Okay.
Yeah. The Polish girl is his first actual serious relationship. But then trouble happens. It's very much like it's a Wonder Years episode. It's just a Wonder Years episode. One of the few, I think, cool highlights about it is that George Coe plays Gavin MacLeod's character. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to replace him, that's a good guy to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, they look similar. And,
yeah. And he's a good actor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they both have that gruffness that you would want.
Yeah. And by the way, great resume.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in Star Trek TNG.
Yeah.
He was in Remo Williams.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have never have guessed this. He was in the original Not Ready for Primetime Players for Saturday Night Live. He was one of the original improv guys that made the first Saturday Night Live crew.
Wow, that's interesting.
I know. I was shocked. But of course, he did you've seen him around. He did awesomely Max Headroom. But then, of course, he was in Murder, She Wrote, Judging Amy, The King of Queens. He did the rounds, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Grey's Anatomy, Golden Girls, Gilmore Girls, West Wing. He's just a character actor, but a very good one.
Yeah, popular old guy character.
Yeah, he was even an Archer.
Another strange thing about this film. So Fred Barzik is the director of this one. He was also the director of Phantom of the Open Hearth. Mm-hmm. And
co-writer, if I remember right.
Yeah, and you have William Lampley again as Flick and Peter Garrity as Archie, but Peter Garrity will show up later as different characters, but the actor keeps coming back to the franchise.
Yeah, which we will address again later.
Well, I mean, these guys weren't from the original. This is from the past two films.
It's from the original.
Well, no, I mean Lampley, he was in Open Hearth and Great American 4th of July.
Right. They carried that over, yeah.
Yeah.
But not A Christmas Story.
No.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like these two versions, the TV and the movie version, were like battling each other in the American zeitgeist.
Well, I mean, I don't know, battling. I mean, that's...
Well, you know what I mean. It's just... Well, they're
if America's fighting Turkey, I mean, it's like, well...
It's like in Wag the Dog when they go to war against Albania.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sure. We're at, quote, war with them.
It's a country that people care so little about that no one bothered to actually check to see if that was true. Yeah. But, that's one of the better highlights of that film. The woman who plays his mother, not that interesting. His brother, still around, but also kind of a throwaway character. But then...
3 years later...
One of the first times that you and I discovered this phenomenon was on the website for a different podcast, the Force 5 podcast. So we don't want to not credit them, but they do miss a few things. There are a few things that they don't have because in the next movie, they consider it to be the second made-for-TV film. But as we have just pointed out, it's like the fourth. It's not even really that close. Well, I mean, I guess if you consider the other ones TV episodes, maybe.
There were short films that were, yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Potato, tomato.
This one also came from the Disney Channel. It's called, oh my God, Ollie Hop Noodles Haven of Bliss.
There are, and I know the stories were similar and had these crazy convoluted names, but this is a bit much.
That's a lot. It sounds like it happens in a porn shop. Ollie Hop Noodle? I know what my first child's name's going to be.
Hey, so how much is an Ollie Hop noodle?
How much you give me for the Ollie Hop Noodle?
I only do that on Thanksgiving.
$10 extra if you touch the underside. This came out in 1988 on the Disney Channel directly. And this, of course, goes back to Ralphie as a teenager, which is kind of the default of the franchise. Ralphie as a kid is kind of rare. Statistically, it's not really one of the more common ones. In this one, it shows Ralphie working a summer job as a mover. His mom looks for the family dog that's lost. The dog is kind of a character in some of these. And then it becomes, at some point...
Essentially, it's an annual trip to a summer resort. It's called Ollie Hopnoodle's Haven of Bliss.
Once again, vacation vibes.
Vacation. But, I mean, if anyone's going to Ollie Hopnoodle's Haven of Bliss, that is an orgy. That is where they're going.
They're going to a spa.
Yeah. So the family's going to a sex spa in Lake Michigan.
Good old-fashioned 50s family trip.
The boys work their fingers to the boner.
They were forced to work when they got there.
They get there and things aren't as fun as they expected, and the dog runs away. And the car, it's just the family truckster is totally untrustworthy and breaking down.
Jesus.
It's all stuff you've seen not only in this franchise, but in other films better.
Yeah, like Vacation?
Yeah. I mean, this is just, it's a hackneyed Vacation ripoff that Gene Shepard, I guess, slapped his name on.
In it, also, Grandma dies and they tie her to the roof. And it also forgets a lot of the events of Christmas Story. In this one, the roles of Flick and Schwartz are flipped. One's the nerdy one and one's the cool one, and they flip them.
Yeah, I don't really understand, why they needed to do that.
Gene Shepard pulled a straight worm tongue into some executive's ear because I don't know why this is a thing. I don't know why this is a movie. Now, his father, this is interesting. So, Ralph is played by Jerry O'Connell.
Again, this is a Matt Dillon-esque upgrade from all the other previous versions.
From Christmas Story. Jerry O'Connell from My Secret Identity. End of resume. I guess Star Trek. And speaking of Star Trek, his father's played by James Sicking, who, if I remember right, and you can check me on this, if I remember right, is a Star Trek alum, the captain of the USS Excelsior from Star Trek 3.
It's disturbing. He got it in one.
And also Doogie Howser's father, correct? I'm not looking this up.
Is the Doogster? He was in Real Monsters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Dr. David Hauser, 97 episodes.
Boom!
This man knows his skiing.
Jake and I watched way too much television as kids.
Thank you, parental unit.
Our brains are worthless. Except in this specific application. It's a forgettable installment. I don't know why it was made. And speaking of I don't know why this was made... There's a sequel. They started writing in 1984, but it didn't come around until later. I think it was 1994. There was an actual theatrical sequel to A Christmas Story. It's once again a summer adventure. And this one more focuses on some of the other side characters, like the Farkas kid, the bully, which is funny because... the kid that plays the Farkas kid is Chris Owen, who played the Shermanator on American Pie.
Oh, yeah.
Who looked exactly like the nerdiest kid in my high school. And, always plays the nerdiest kid, but he's, in this one, the biggest bully in school, which is like, okay. So... yeah, that basically is the whole thing. It actually focuses mostly on them, Ralphie's interaction with them. There's a new bully in town who has sort of knocked Farkas off of the high chair, and kind of dealing with that, with the more, bullshit, who cares, bully politics. But there's a subplot where Ralphie writes a book report based on an erotic Italian book.
Huh. It wasn't Polish.
Was not Polish this time.
Okay.
This was Italian. Yeah. And then he also has like a weird rivalry with the neighbors across the street, the Bumpuses, which they do reference in other versions of this. He calls them in this one, though, the Bumpai, which I think is funny. That's actually pretty good.
Proud feet.
That's pretty good. That one's pretty good.
Yeah.
And this one, the only really notable thing about this one was that Gene Shepard, this is his last run as the narrative. There's no connective thread for this one and the other ones. It seems kind of like on its own. I mean, Kieran Culkin does play young Ralphie, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you have Charles Grodin as the dad,
and Mary
Steenburgen.
That's pretty awesome. That's a good cast.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, there's a ton of little actors that pop up. Glenn Shaddix, Dick O'Neill. Just popping their heads in.
Unfortunately, no one cared. But
why would anybody care?
Well, I know. And so the only other notable thing, I know I said that before, but the only other notable thing was that in the theater, it was called Runs in the Family. And when it came out on home video, they changed the name of it to My Summer Story, which I guess they were trying to combine with Christmas Story, I guess.
I mean, that would make more sense. But this is also, I mean, timeline-wise, this was being made, 4 years before it will become 24-hour marathon feature.
True. That is true.
So, I mean, it's in the zeitgeist, but maybe not as entrenched as it will be.
Yeah, that is true. And I guarantee you, almost no one has ever seen this. I promise you, no one is. The number of people who've seen this is minuscule. You could fit them all in a life raft from the Titanic. Nobody has seen this. But it did come out on Blu-ray. There is a Blu-ray.
Fantastic. Great.
As far as I know, this may be the only one that came out on Blu-ray of the sequels. Or at least the ones before that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that they would. Who's putting the effort into that?
Well, I don't know. Have you seen Criterion? How do they decide that shit? That doesn't make any sense.
If somehow these Playhouse episodes get Criterion edition, I will eat my shorts.
Well, I go through the list of Criterion movies, and I'm like, okay, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. What? Showgirls? What are you doing? Doesn't make any sense.
No, actually, Showgirls wasn't Criterion.
Aww.
There were some Pinterest posts, and there was even talk of Kyle MacLachlan kind of doing a funny joke bit about it, but it wasn't actually Criterion.
So this is where we get to the point of the franchise where everything falls off a cliff.
Yes. I think this is the time where they have like, all right, Christmas Story is a thing. We can use that.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have a gap, but in 2012, on October 30th, 2012, just in time for Halloween, in 2012, the direct sequel to the 1983 A Christmas Story, but completely ignores everything other than that, especially the 1994 My Summer Story, A Christmas Story 2 comes out. Now, this might seem a little familiar again. This is set 6 years after the 1983 Christmas Story, where now Ralphie is 15 and he wants a car.
Wow.
I know.
How original.
This was a pretty shameless and crappy direct-to-DVD sequel.
Yeah, this is on that list of like, why the fuck did you make this?
Yeah, this is just money. Essentially, the story tells of Ralphie. He wants this car,
which is a Mercury 8 convertible.
Yes, 1939 Mercury 8 convertible. He goes to like look at it. Wackness ensues. He ends up damaging the car.
He goes to the dealership to test drive it.
Yes,
He ends up damaging
yes.
it, yeah.
He's afraid that he's going to be thrown in jail because of this. He promises to pay for all the damages so that his parents won't find out and he won't get hauled away. He and Flick, and Schwartz, they go work at the store that is highlighted in the original film, the Higby store.
Oh, okay. All right.
They go through all these different departments. They end up getting into a fight with the store Santa, and they all get fired. They all get into a fight. Ralphie ends up getting his job back by begging and pleading, and he's getting all the money, but he ends up like $1 short, and he steals, Flick's lucky dollar or whatever.
What?
But on the way to give the money to the dealer, he sees a less fortunate family, and he donates some of that money to them instead. But everything turns out just fine, and he ends up getting the car, and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
Yeah, this one's crap.
That seems really forced.
It is. There's another stupid costume, just like the Pink Bunny costume in the original. There really isn't much of anything to say about this film.
No, and it's really sad too, because like unlike the other prequels and sequels, who don't give a shit what Ralphie actually looks like. They don't give a shit about A Christmas Story. They're just going to make him not Chris O'Donnell, Jerry O'Connell or
Matt Dillon.
They don't give a shit. That's fine. But in this one, they go out of their way to make the most cartoonishly absurd parody of Ralphie from A Christmas Story as they possibly can. Dyed blonde hair, the glasses, the affectations. It's completely on purpose and terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like a fucking joke.
Oh, yeah. It looks like something out of like a Dennis the Menace cartoon from the Sunday strip.
Yeah, actually, you're right. He looks more like Dennis the Menace than he does Ralphie, yeah. And also, they stole a bunch of stuff from Ollie Hoopnoodle. I mean, it's just... It's just a hop noodle, a Holly Hop Noodle.
Ollie, who gives a shit?
Also, I think the most telling thing about this one is that Daniel Stern from Home Alone and The Wonder Years plays the father.
Of all of the people.
Of anybody.
Why?
Why Daniel Stern? Like, that it's because of The Wonder Years. But then also, he's not the narrator. What the fuck are you doing, dude? What are you doing? And before we try and answer that question, this movie was made... It was directed by Brian Levant, who directed Jingle All the Way.
Huh.
That sums it up. Why did they get Sinbad to play the father at that point?
I mean, was Charles Grodin still alive?
At that point, yeah, totally.
Why don't you just get him
to... actually, he may not have been 2012.
Oh, no, he died in 2021.
Okay, all right.
Just get Grodin back.
Get Grodin. Who cares? You know what?
Get your Grodon. And especially, like, he'd worked with him and, like...
Please get your Grodon. Grodon Baker. You know what? Gavin McLeod may have still been alive.
Ooh, that's
He might have been.
Gavin McLeod.
I know George Coe was.
Yeah, he died in 2021.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why not? What? Just get anybody else. I don't give a shit. Get Schwarzenegger in there. I don't give a shit. Why Daniel Stern of all people? Daniel Stern.
Bumpus.
Fragile.
It's a great award. I mean, Home Alone, I think Wonder Years had been off the air for a long time.
Yeah, but his voice is so iconic as the narrator in a show that's basically, in a movie that's essentially both inspired the original Wonder Years and then is also this movie ripping off the Wonder Years. I don't think that was unintentional. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, possibly.
This is not narrated by Gene. It's Nat Maudlin. And it is a maudlin film. That's for sure. It's not. For so many thousands of reasons, it's really terrible. It really, really sucks.
Now, the question is, so that was like the first, like, quote-unquote, legitimate sequel.
Yeah, direct.
Yeah, I mean, even though Summer Story is a sequel to that... but it doesn't count, I guess. It depends who's rewriting history here. Would you say that A Christmas Story 2 is better or worse than A Christmas Story Christmas?
Oh,
from the year of our Lord 2022.
It is worse than A Christmas Story Christmas.
I would agree. I would concur.
Yeah. And Christmas Story Christmas decides that none of those things ever happened. Any of them. Well, I don't know. A couple of them might have happened.
Yeah, I mean, they don't outright discount that those things could have happened.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one, it jumps. I mean, it's almost 40 years later.
But it's set in the 70s, right?
Yes.
It's a little confusing, but I'm pretty sure it's set in like 72 or something.
Yeah, which I think is, I mean, it's something we can get into. I found it odd that it's set in the 70s, but the way that A Christmas Story is so of the time, that was a film from the 80s that used broad brushstrokes to feel like the 40s.
Or 50s.
Yeah,
Whichever.
but this is a 2020s film that had zero sense of the 70s.
Yeah, it really, until he goes to the mall and gets the toys with the original packaging, I could have told you it was made contemporarily. Like, it looked like it was made today.
Yeah, I mean, the sets, the dialogue, the societal ambiance, it's all anachronistic. Yeah. It doesn't feel like it at all.
Even the costuming is kind of, it's not even like performative in an exaggerated way, which would have helped. It's like, oh, this might have come out in the 70s, or I got it at Old Navy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it could have been any time. Where were like the bell bottoms? Where were the afros? Where were like some big jewelry? Where are the flower children? Where's anything?
Where's all the vintage cars?
Maybe they just didn't have the budget, so they tried to not show vehicles that much. I can only think of like one or two scenes that actually have,
I guess,
vehicles in them, and they are like only shown from the inside mostly.
Yeah, that's true. And on top of that, honestly, the only times that I was like, because like I kept going back and forth whether I thought this was today or then, when they answer landlines, I'm like, okay, so this is probably the past, but at the same time, this is an old house, and he's basically in his old house from the Christmas Story, and of course his elderly parents have landlines. So even that was like, well, I don't know, I can't tell you.
Yeah. Other than that he has to be a certain age, and the 40s, 50s, it has to put him within the 70s range. Otherwise, he's a Highlander.
Well, or they're having it's the same problem with Indiana Jones 5, when it's like, is this the 50s or whatever? I mean, but you're 70-something, so... But
at least he did drink from the holy cup, so...
Actually, you know what? Well, then why would he be so old so early? No, you're wrong. It's the opposite problem.
Well,
no, because if you once again, I'm going back to the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. In that, they explained that Indy was born in 1899, right? So if it's the 1950s or whatever in Indiana Jones 5, why is he 80? Doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, I mean, what? The actor would have been 70-something playing a 60-something?
What, Indy?
Yeah.
Well, in Crystal Skull, maybe, but that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, how old is he now? He's like 80-something now, right?
He's in his 80s. Yes, but it's set in like the 70s or 60s. No, it may not be that. It may actually be set in the 50s.
Are we talking about the new one?
I don't know. Yeah, the new one.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking about the Crystal Skull one. Okay.
No. Well, even then, that wasn't... Yeah, that one was more forgivable. But this one, you're like, what? Like, this one obviously takes place just a couple of years after Crystal Skull.
I don't know. It hasn't come out yet.
It's not like they're good.
If you're listening to this in the year 30,098, then, we haven't seen it yet, so...
So was Grant Morrison right? I just found a bunch of copies of DC 1 Million.
Oh, gotcha.
Is Commandy there?
Can you put him on the phone, please?
Kazar versus Commandy.
Ooh, I think they just make out.
You know who wins? Jonah Hex when he travels into the future. People forget about that. There was a period where Jonah Hex traveled into the future.
Yeah. Kind of like Mad Max Hex.
Well, it was, and it was weird.
Yeah.
It was super weird.
Yeah, they didn't do that very long for good reason.
Yeah, that was very strange. It was basically Oliver Stone's Conan. So anyway.
So Christmas Story Christmas. So this is another Christmas sequel to A Christmas Story. Our protagonist is the Ralphie. He's all grown up now with kids of his own, but just like the original, he's still a childlike dreamer. He's a struggling author and must step up to the plate of Christmas spirit progenitor after the passing of his father, the late, great Darren McGavin, or any of those other actors who played his father.
Right.
There's a distinct magic, I think, that is lost when the point of view is put into adult Ralphie and removed from the children, which I think is like the heart of the holiday and is placed on this bumbling parent who's kind of milquetoast.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's a good point. I never really thought about that. Yeah, if it had been from the perspective of the children, which they tried to highlight in the film, it would have been a far superior movie. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And especially they do the same dream sequences, but when these fantasies are coming from the sad, grasping dreams of this adult failure, it's kind of like a more depressing and uninteresting dream on.
Oh, yeah, it is, yeah. This fail son that is Ralphie Parker.
But instead of stepping up and doing what he needs to do, he's just dreaming these fantasies about what could be, of him like winning awards for the best book of all time, or it's stupid bullshit that when you're 8, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But when you're like 50 and you need to like feed your kids or, take care of your grieving mother, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, because as Darren McGavin's dead, what are you going to do? I was afraid they were going to recast him, but no, the premise of the film is that Darren McGavin, his father, dies right before Christmas.
Yeah, and that's actually a good plot point. It's really the 100%. Whole thesis of the film is that because his dad is dead, he must now take over and make Christmas great again, like his father would. Oh, the old man would have been a Trump supporter.
Oh, God,
that's true.
That's true.
And so he goes to take care of his mother, and they're going to have Christmas at his mother's house, but they end up losing all the presents, and he's trying to...
They get stolen.
They get stolen, which is kind of never resolved.
No,
except for
they never
magically resolved later.
There's no actual real resolution to that within the plot.
Yeah, I thought maybe when the cop who's again we'll give some spoilers for this film.
Yeah, so brace yourself. Spoiler alert if you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, if you're holding out to watch A Christmas Story Christmas, bully for you. Come back to us, I guess. But for all of you other brave listeners, we're just gonna spoil this thing right here. So at the same time as he's trying to put on this great Christmas for his kids, for his family, he is also trying to sell his book, this sci-fi epic that nobody wants. I like to think that it's like Dianetics or something that he's written.
Fuck you, I was going to say that. He's like L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, I think he's written this. The story of Xenu coming...
Or Joseph Smith, who was also a failed science fiction writer who decided to turn it into a religion.
See,
L. Ron Hubbard was not the first.
Where's this sequel? I want to see Ralphie start a cult. That's what I want.
Yeah, cool. Yes, if you're going to make him a sci-fi writer. And also, where did the sci-fi thing come from? I like it, but where the fuck did that come from? There was no hints to that in the original. There's no
No,
even in his fan of westerns.
Even his fantasy, he does another western fantasy in this one.
Yeah, it's all westerns.
Wouldn't that make more sense if he's trying to write western fiction and people are like, it's the 70s, man. Nobody's reading cowboys and Indian stuff.
Right, right. That would work, or even just make a bridge where he tells another flashback story about how westerns became passé, and then he got into Star Trek or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he got really into Buck Rogers serials and
Hindland. Yeah,
and the Flash Gordon.
Yeah,
and so he can't sell this book, and he's supposed to write the obituary for his father, but he can't figure out what to do, and he's stumped, and he ends up finishing his second sequel to the failed book, and then nobody wants the first book.
God, he sounds a lot like or Joseph Smith. I mean, it's really kind of uncanny.
So then he writes, he just writes stories about his father and Christmas and how much Christmas meant to his father and how his father really made Christmas special for the family. That ends up being a hit. This happens at the same time that he's told this convoluted lie to his daughter about a Christmas star on top of the tree, that once it's broken, he has to go get another star, and he has to break into his buddy's bar.
It's Flick's Bar.
To Flick's Bar. Yeah, I was going to get to Flick's Bar, because Flick's Bar is something we need to talk about. I think that's another thesis for this film. But he breaks into Flick's bar to steal his star, and then he gets busted by a cop who ends up being...
Farkas.
the bully. And then Farkas relates to him that moment when Ralphie beat him up in the original Christmas Story, that was actually a pivotal moment for him in his life, and that he turned a corner and wasn't going to be like his father, and he was going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, being a cop, but...
Which would have been fine. It would have been actually a really good plot point if they had actually explored any of it.
Yeah, and especially like in 2022, hey, I became a cop and I'm like the best of humanity now. It's like, that's not really. But that's a kind of a complete dropped plot point. It's complete 5-minute side plot.
Well, and not only that, but everyone saw it coming, and it's weird because like he does do these like weird menacing things where it looks like he's threatening him. And then doesn't. The idea is that Ralphie is misconstruing the things that he says as threats, but they're actually innocent. But if you watch it, he really seems like he's threatening him.
Yeah, especially if it's this guy who actually have some reverence for. Like, hey, when we were kids, you really like changed my life, and I feel better as a person because of you. Why don't you have like just a nice conversation with him? Yeah,
because he acts the entire time like he really hates his guts still.
It's really kind of a similar story beat to the old guy in Home Alone, who everyone thinks like killed his family.
Right.
He doesn't say, hey, how's it going? He just doesn't say anything up until the moment when you need him. And then he's like, oh, I'm actually a nice guy and I love my family, etc., etc.
And I'm an important plot point.
Exactly.
That resolves the conflict. But with this one, it's like, oh, that happened. Bye. Never to be seen again.
And I thought maybe when he dropped him off, saying, hey, I'm not going to take you in, because you helped me out. Oh, we got a call from these hoods who were stealing presents. And are these yours? I was waiting for that to happen.
Right, that would have been so much better. Like, well, yeah, make him catch the people that stole these presents. That would have been amazing. That would have been a far superior movie. But no, in fact, the impetus to that side plot is forced. The star thing has already been resolved because the whole thing was that all they had was the star, and his daughter is used to only having angels on the top of the tree. That tree is hideous, by the way. It's really a bad tree. So his father like puts the star on top of the tree and then lies to his daughter about how
Santa Claus won't come to this particular part of the country if they don't have a star.
Well, sure, but basically he lays out that in this part of the country we use stars, not angels, and then that's why he says why. But it's a complete lie. So when they go back to the mall and they make a dumb joke about the mall scene from the original. She sits on Santa's lap and is in kind of an adorable scene. She grills him about not actually being real. Mm-hmm. And she asks him star or angel. And he says star. And so then because she believes her father, she's like, oh, you are really Santa. Cool. And then she believes now from now on. You could have just left it. That could have been it. There's no reason to bring up the star ever again. But they bring up the star again just to shoehorn in Farkas.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need for that at all. But you're right. If he had been the guy that caught the kids that stole the presents, that resolves the plot, and it's great. What the fuck are they doing? And also, you could cut a half an hour out of that movie. Which isn't even very long, apparently.
Yeah, and then you don't need Deus Ex at the end.
Yeah, there's no need.
Because at the very end, he's written this story about his father that gets taken by his wife secretly and given to the paper, and the paper doesn't put it in the obituaries. It puts it on the front page and makes it a big story, and everybody reads it, and he's getting calls from blah, 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 and everyone loves it. It's so heartwarming.
Which makes no sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And before the grandpa died, he somehow knew exactly what his grandchildren, who he doesn't see, would want for Christmas, bought it, wrapped it, and they found those presents later. And so the stuff that they had bought and lost, it's just there. It just magically, it's already there. Ghost Grandpa, he got it.
It's Ghost Dad. Bill Cosby came and saved the day.
Here, no, just drink this. Now, I think there are a couple things that we need to talk about. One, the actors. Now, Ralphie, Flick, Randy, and Farkas all reprised roles because...
On the surface, and we will get into why this isn't actually true, but on the surface, my impression always was like, oh, he's one of those child actors that didn't get a lot of work afterwards, and now he's doing a favor to the rest of the people in that movie and giving them a chance to reprise their roles, even though they're probably not famous actors, which they aren't, but that's not really exactly accurate.
Yeah, I mean, the other actors didn't really go on to do a whole lot.
No, not really.
But I guess they're just putting them in because of nostalgia? I guess.
Like I said, I feel like it was just like, hey, you guys were kind of failed after Christmas Story, and this is important to you. It's important to me. Come on back, which is good. I think that's a positive thing.
Yes,
I don't think
but
there's anything wrong with that.
Well, I think there might be a reason why they didn't really work in the industry as much.
Well, yeah, they're not great.
They're not very good.
No, they're not that good.
And it comes even more bizarre when Julie Haggerty takes over the mother role for the retired All-American mother Melinda Dillon.
From Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
From Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes, like why?
She is the mom.
From the late 70s and early 80s, she was mom.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. And I don't know why she turned it down. Maybe it's personal reasons. Maybe she can't act anymore. I have no idea. I have no clue. We don't want to,
I think she's retired. I don't think she does any acting work,
which is fine.
But if you're replacing her, what's wrong with replacing these other people?
Yeah, any other actor. Yeah,
because it's not like they are like, oh, I totally see. Oh, that he's totally Flick. I mean, who else? Nobody else play Flick. Flick looks so just like Flick. I mean, I'm sorry, he's just some guy.
But also, though, let's say that they had done that and they had replaced all those people, you and I then would be having this conversation about like, well, why does Ralphie come back but nobody else? You know what I mean? It just feels like, I get why you did it. Like you wanted the original crew or whatever, as much as you could. You know what I mean? Like it's to make it a direct sequel.
Meh. Fine. It is what it is. But also the roles that they put them in, so awful.
Two-dimensional cartoons,
so
which is
much.
fine because that's what they were before. But now they're supposed to be important. Like they've got the weight of all those years on their shoulders, and they can give sage advice or whatever. But actually, they just kind of do stupid shit.
Well, I think they do give sage advice in one way. If you're reading into it, this film speaks to the ills of adult Christmas drunks.
True.
The people who you see, all right, Flick now owns a bar.
Right, which is interesting.
That bar, the week before Christmas, is full of people from around town who don't want to be around their families at all.
Which is exactly how it is in towns like college towns where, everybody who goes to college in that town leaves, but then everybody who's from that town that left because they don't want to be stuck there comes back and everybody goes to the bar to be away from their family.
Yeah, but it doesn't come off well. It comes like all of these people are failures, especially this new character they introduce, which is the
quarterback of the football team.
Larry Novak, the quarterback of the football team, which we have no reference to, but he's just this long-haired loser who gets a weird scene at the dinner where he eats all the leftovers, which felt like they'd cut out stuff for time, I think.
I guess. Well, and see, that character, if you're telling the right story, that character is a really interesting addition. So this movie is, by and large, supposed to be about feeling like a failure as an adult. And that's why they include that quarterback character, because he's essentially just a down on his luck wino, even though he was the quarterback of the football team. But they don't do anything with it.
No.
They don't really explore any of that.
They do nothing with it. They do nothing with any of these characters. I mean, you're supposed to read into them being failures, but then they just have them doing the same bullshit triple dog dare, ski jump. On top of that, Ralphie has two kids, a little girl and an older boy. And the boy wants a sled. That's what he wants so bad.
So weird.
There is the, old drunkard challenges other old drunkard to go off the super...
It's Flick and... Schwartz.
It's the same dare thing as before,
yeah.
but Just like
There's no point
in
to it.
like a Christmas Story, not Christmas Story, but a Christmas Vacation. They have to like go down this insane hill, death-defying jump, and he does it and he survives or whatever. And then the son gets on a sled and does a similar thing. Well, where do you get that sled from? Shouldn't the film like be building up to him getting a sled and getting able to do this?
Especially since he makes a huge fit about when they try and dance around the idea that they don't have the presents. Ralphie and his wife are like, oh, they don't want to tell them outright that the presents have been stolen, but they tell them like, well, don't expect anything this year. Like, just it's the thought that counts or whatever. And he throws a huge fit about not getting a sled and then stomps off. So, what's the deal with the new sled?
And if he can just have a sled anytime, well then what's he need?
Just manifest the sled.
He just manifests the sled, and then it just goes away.
What does he need? I don't. Yes, it does. It just leaves. They don't ever address it again.
And if he just had this sled time, that's something you build up to in a film. You don't just drop it in the middle as like a non sequitur and then it goes away. Then it completely undercuts the rest of the. I didn't.
It's like there are a lot of interesting plot points that they lay out, but there's no cohesive like thread to bind them together. It just feels like a collection of, wish lists of things that people would want to see out of a sequel to A Christmas Story, and also things that people should see out of a good sequel to A Christmas Story, but none of them really fit together. It feels like a weird patchwork quilt of a movie, and it feels really long.
It's 98 minutes long. That's with credits and everything. So
right, but it feels like it's like 3 hours long because it drags on so many times. I guess this is the end. No, I guess he's gonna go break into that bar. And you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, I
don't understand.
Kind of like a remarkable piece of lifeless plastic. Yeah. I think it taps on the beats, but doesn't have any of the rhythm. It doesn't have any of the familial tension. It doesn't have any, like the sweetness or the sourness to anything that happened in the original. One of the things is like you're putting now an ineffectual dweeb in the McGavin role.
Then write a different narrative.
Yeah, because he's not bringing the fire, the funny, or the fervor, and you need some of that to like give some life to this fucking film.
Yeah, to do something about how, man, I'm becoming my father, that kind of thing, or how he's not his father, but they don't do that either. And you could parallel that with him writing the obituary, that he has a hard time writing it because he's not his father. You know what I mean? And he has to figure out how to evaluate his father's role in his upbringing or whatever.
Or highlight,
but they don't do that.
How different I am as a father and how better or worse I am.
Right, but they don't do any of that.
Yeah, there's none of it. There's no drama laid out. I don't understand. Apparently, like, the wife works at, like, a bookstore, I think.
I guess.
To, like, make ends meet. But they really don't seem to be, like, hard up for money.
Except for when they get all their presents stolen and they're like, well, all that money we saved is gone.
Well, that's because they also, everybody has a budget, that they have for presents. And if you spend all of your Christmas money for that, nobody's going to have that.
Well, sure, but don't bring it up unless you're going to talk about your budget in general. You know what I mean? Like, because like if they're doing well, they should be able to just be able to afford new ones. And if they're not doing well, then that should be a way bigger deal that they don't have any money to do it. But they kind of shrug.
Yeah. That happened.
Like everything's normal. Like it doesn't make any sense. It does feel like this weird pastiche of different ideas. Like it feels like a board full of Post-it notes of plot points that somehow get funneled into one story. It doesn't, and we're not saying it's a terrible movie because it's not. There are way worse versions. In fact, most of the sequels and prequels to this are way worse than this movie. But it's not a good movie.
It's
fine.
Mediocre to fine. It feels like Warner Brothers HBO is like, oh, let's make some nostalgic Christmas content that nobody wanted or needed, and we'll slap this on it. Ring it up.
I'm surprised they didn't insert Ralphie into Space Jam 2, like they did with every fucking other.
He might be there. You don't know.
He might. You know what? He might be. I haven't looked. Yeah, but there's things that this movie does well, like There are moments that I'm glad at how they don't beat you over the head with the nostalgia at moments. Like when he goes upstairs to find, in his mother's house, to find the Christmas ornaments, and he's digging through stuff, and he comes across the lampshade to the leg lamp. Mm-hmm. But they don't point it out. They don't pull a remake of Clash of the Titans with the owl, where they make it a joke. There might as well be a slide whistle.
But they show scenes from the original film.
They do. Of course they do. Yeah, which I also thought was unnecessary. Like, you don't need to show the Gavin McCall scenes, but they did. Just in case you don't remember. They also do it with Flick and Schwartz, where they're like, so just so you know, these are the original actors, which is really why they did it. But there are times when they do make reference that they put in the background, so they don't beat you over the head with it. Like I do appreciate the way he did the lampshade thing. Like he just looks at it and puts it aside. No reference to it whatsoever. They don't make it a thing. There's no musical cues. That's fine. It's way better than in Crystal Skull when they knock over the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, because they're hitting those story beats so hard and heavy, like the original. The junky car or the triple dog dare.
That stuff is kind of unexcusable.
The bumpus stuff. The bullying. I mean, it's all like beat for beat, just like the original.
Well, kind of, but not in the same order or has the same impact on the narrative.
That's also because there isn't much of a driving narrative that captures you.
Not really.
So it's really just like post-it notes of like, all right, let's have kids deal with bullies, but it's slightly different. We're going to flip it on its head, but let's not actually like get into the characters at all or their internal dialogue.
And in the third act, they're like, let's make our kids the main protagonists, kind of, but then not tell it from their perspective. I think you're right in the fact that it should have been told from one of the kids' perspectives, because they end up being more interesting and kind of the saviors of the movie, kind of.
I mean, if we had anything, I have nothing of them to like grasp onto.
Well, I mean, they do solve the bully problem on their own, which is cool. Obviously, a callback to the. I mean, I do like that scene where they're talking about how he beat up Farkas, and his wife is like, "Oh, really? Is that true? I didn't know that was true." Like, that was funny. Where she thought he was bullshitting that story the entire time, but it ended up being real. That's fine. It's a subtle moment. It's fine. It's not in your face. And then they do the whole kid thing. They do a different version of it where they figure out a more cerebral way to beat the bully, which is great. But like, then make the kids more important. Make them characters.
Yeah, make the wife a
instead
character.
Of just kids.
Make the wife a kid character.
Yes, she's barely a character.
The character that we have is Ralphie, who's just doing the same shit, and it's completely ineffectual in every way, shape, and form.
We don't know anything about him from between the first movie and this one to make us like his character more or feel like he's grown.
No,
like, there's
other than he is
there.
older. That is all.
It's just Ralphie, but older. Yeah. That's it. I mean, there's nothing there. But there are good scenes. There are good moments that I think they handle well. But for the most part, don't bother.
Yeah.
Now, and it's not to say that it's as bad as any of those other ones, because the other ones are way worse. But it's not as good as it could have been or should have been.
I think the last 10 minutes are sweet.
Sure.
I think if you somehow fell asleep during the 60 minutes of it and you woke up and you're like, oh, okay, that was nice. That was sweet. But there isn't enough humor, drama, or specialness in the rest of the film to get you there.
Right. There are like 2 or 3 actual like chuckles in the movie. Everything else is just kind of obvious or on the nose.
Yeah.
Or
I don't,
not funny.
I don't think I really cared for much of it. I think it was pretty boilerplate for me. I think there's a moment where they flip the script and Ralphie is the one who does the shopping for Christmas while the wife and the mother drink in the bar.
In the lounge that they have at a
the
mall?
Mall lounge, yeah.
Do you remember that being at the Independence Center? Because I don't.
I think this was we had like J.C. Penney's and Sears and things, but we didn't have like a Macy's I think
Yeah,
maybe
there's also no fucking lounge.
Yeah, I think maybe like in the 50s, 60s, you kind of had a lounge area in those like big like
well,
Macy's
you had like a
department
smoking
stores.
room or whatever, but I mean, this is the 70s.
I think this is like a holdover because it's supposed to be a long-term fixture of the town, this department store.
Sure, I guess, but I mean, it just seemed so odd.
It seemed out of place. It seemed like it was like
did.
meant to be like in the 50s.
And they don't really give you any like lead up to it either. Like that, like they want to make his mother a character, but they don't. They do this stuff where every now and then she's a card shark, you know, because she plays Scrabble like ruthlessly, and then she
hates carolers.
Yes, she hates carolers, but she'll take a bullet for the family. And then she loves she has to drink because, you know, she's kind of a badass bitch. Fine. But like there's no connective tissue to make that important either. Like she's barely a character. All you know is like 3 things about her, and none of them have anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
They don't impact the story other than the caroler thing being one plot point. That's it. I mean, it's just nothing. The
whole film's like that.
It. Yeah, it is. It is. Which is, once again, not to say that it's a terrible movie, because it's not. It's not a terrible movie. It's a completely watchable movie. It's also not a good movie. Something surprising that we ran across when we were doing research for this, which we should have known. I don't know why we didn't know this ahead of time. That's kind of a failure on our part, is the reason that Peter Billingsley is not a failed child actor, like he seems like he would be, is because he's actually fucking killing it in Hollywood and has been right off the bat. He's got a great resume. As a producer, he produced things like F is for Family, a BlizzCon documentary, Undeniable with Joe Buck, who hates the Royals, apparently, 30 for 30 on ESPN, Iron Man. He's actually, okay, and we should get into this, he's actually an important part of the MCU. Well, not important, but like an active part of the MCU, as an actor and producer.
Yeah, I believe part of that comes from, he became best friends with Vince Vaughn when they shared the screen on this CBS special in 1990. And then he worked with Jon Favreau, which I think is how...
Who's best friends with Vince
Vaughn. They got
Vaughn.
those connections there.
Because they worked together on Zathura, the video game, and the movie.
Yeah, Dinner for Five, The Breakup, Iron Man, Maid.
And he also plays a character in the MCU in 2 movies, a reoccurring character. What's his character's name in those?
Jimmy 2 times.
I tell you.
William Ginter Riva.
Yeah, in Iron Man and then Spider-Man Far From Home?
Spider-Man Not Home Yet.
Spider-Man, if you're hearing this, we're not home. He's killing it. Man, he's been doing really well. William Ginter Riva in both Iron Man and Spider-Man Far From Home. And he's been a producer on, at least tangentially a producer on a lot of Marvel stuff, like surprisingly. So don't feel bad for him. He's doing just fine. Man's kicking ass, and good for him.
He reminds me of if young Ralphie was morphed into Dan Lauria, but it didn't quite take all the way.
Okay, all right, I see what you're saying. Here's another weird thing. Yeah, he was best friends with Vince Vaughn, and guess what? He did CBS School Break specials with Vince Vaughn. So bring that back around again. He was in a bunch of Hershey's chocolate commercials as Messy Marvin, the kid with the chocolate over his face. He actually did a fuck ton. He did 120 TV commercials.
Yeah, no, that's. I read that's where like he got his break doing this, but he was been doing commercials a long time before and after A Christmas Story.
Yeah. He was a Viking in the TV commercial world. Oh, and also don't forget that he is related to Barbara Billingsley, who was June Cleaver on Leave It to Beaver. Which, wow, that says a lot right there. Right? I mean, the 50s nostalgia thing. Believe it or not, A Christmas Story is not a standalone. It's not the movie that you may remember necessarily. It's a honestly small installment in a wider universe of films, most of them being sucky. That's the medical term. Christmas Story will continue to endure as one of the greatest. You know what? A unique installment in the genre of Christmas movies, because it is a nostalgic film about nostalgia, and there are almost no films like that. So it's really great as long as you don't see it too many times, which is kind of how it works right now.
That's kind of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, it is a great movie, but then you see it 24 hours in a row, and you're like, I never want to see this again, like ever.
Yeah.
Just like It's a Wonderful Life. Only see it a couple of times ever, and it's a good movie.
It's like heroin. Just do it like once every few years. That's it.
You don't want to start a trendy heroin habit.
The problem is when you do heroin every day, 24 hours a day.
Gets old. Gets a little old. You get bored. That's just how it is.
That's the problem with heroin. Boredom.
That is the problem with heroin, the pedestrian nature of the high. But, it's a beloved classic that everyone should see at least once. And if you're sick of it, just consider the fact that you're probably sick of it because you've seen it too many times.
Yeah. Give it a break and come back to it.
Give it a break. Come back to it. It's a good movie. And is a tentpole in a crazy, weird, unknown cinematic universe. Like the anti-Tommy Westphal universe.
Yeah. So bizarre. As are we. And as are you for listening to this long Christmas podcast.
Oh, I thought you were going to do like a never-ending story thing there.
What, like the Luck Dragon?
A long
like the
time. No, not the Luck Dragon. What am I, an amateur? You'll know a Falcor reference if I make a Falcor reference, okay?
I got your Falcor right here. Well, we hope you have all enjoyed and learned a great deal about A Christmas Story.
We hope you learned something. This was kind of new to us when we found out.
Yeah. We're all learning together. If you wouldn't mind rating, reviewing, liking, sharing, subscribing, all of those things would be great. Any type of little review, possibly 5 Falcors on the podcast app of your choice would be grand, and we would...
Apple Podcasts helps a lot.
Yeah, that one. That one's a good one. Yeah, and we will be back.
Subscribe, rate, review, yeah.
Yeah, I already said those things. I already said them. I said all of those things.
Sorry, sir.
He's not.
May I have some more?
Oh, you'll get more.
You don't know what happens after the camera turns off.
Shut up. Skip, take us out one way.
Fair enough. Well, please make sure that you support your local comic shops and retailers. And from Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say Godspeed, fair wizards.
Fragile.